Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you. I never imagined one simple road trip would spiral into something unforgettable. That night, sitting alone in a cheap roadside motel with Cole, my stepson, I couldn't shake the tension that had built inside me for months. My husband Mark had been working out of state for what felt like forever. I missed him, of course I did, but it wasn't just about the distance. It was about the silence, the neglect, the way he'd stopped asking about my day, stopped seeing me. So when I asked Cole to drive me upstate to see his dad, I had no idea that'd be the decision that changed everything. Let me take you back to where it started. That morning, I caught a glance at myself in the hallway mirror as I grabbed my bag. My hair was a bit wild from the summer heat, my eyes tired, but I still had it. That spark. That thing that made me feel like me. Underneath the stress, I still felt alive. In the kitchen, Cole was spooning cereal into his mouth, his usual lopsided grin on full display. "You're starting college this fall," I said, leaning on the counter, "but you still drive like you're auditioning for a Fast and Furious sequel." "Come on, hotshot. Take me to your dad." Cole smirked. "Only if you promise to tell him I need a better car. Drive first. We'll negotiate later." 2 hours into the trip, the sun blazed overhead as we cruised down a stretch of highway that looked like it hadn't seen civilization since the 90s. I scrolled through my phone in the back seat while Cole hummed along to some indie band he liked, tossing out dumb jokes every few minutes. He always had that goofy charm, the kind that got under your skin in the best and worst ways. Then suddenly, a sharp hiss, a thud, and the car gave out. Cole pulled over, cursing under his breath. "Damn it, I think we're done here." I looked up from my phone, irritated. Seriously, the next 2 hours were a mix of frustration, spotty signal, and useless calls to roadside assistance. Eventually, we gave up. The only place nearby, a rundown motel that looked like it belonged in a crime docuseries. At the front desk, Cole talked to the old man behind the counter while I stood there, arms crossed, sweat clinging to my neck. I kept thinking Mark's going to freak when he hears about this, but deep down, another thought crept in. Why do I care so much? When we got to the room and opened the door, any sliver of hope I had evaporated. One bed, one lamp, one tiny window facing a gravel parking lot. "This is it," I said, blinking. Cole laughed. "What'd you expect, a suite at the Ritz?" I gave him a look. "Remind me to cancel your Yelp privileges." But underneath the sarcasm was a twinge of something else. This kid, well, not a kid anymore, had this way of making light of everything, and I hated how it made me smile. "This heat's gonna kill me," I muttered, running a hand down my neck. "I need a shower." "Knock yourself out, Lisa," he said, tossing his bag on the bed like it was home. "Make yourself comfortable in your kingdom." I ducked into the bathroom, shutting the door behind me. I stared at myself in the mirror, droplets of sweat sliding down my back. "You're 46. He's 22. Stop being weird." I shook my head and turned on the water, trying to let the steam wash the tension away. But even as the water poured over me, my mind wandered. "He's Mark's son," I told myself. "He's family." But Cole wasn't a boy anymore. He was tall, fit, playful, and beneath that charm there was something else, something magnetic. Back in the room, the air was still sticky. I threw on a loose cotton dress, something light for the heat, and decided to grab a quick dinner at the motel diner. I needed space. I needed a breath. Anything to slow down the whirlpool in my chest. The diner was basic, with old vinyl booths and a TV playing baseball reruns no one was watching. I ordered a salad and a glass of wine, hoping the cool bitterness would bring me back to earth. But my thoughts? They were upstairs. Every time Cole flashed in my mind, I felt a strange twist in my stomach. Not guilt. Not really. Just electricity. Confusion. By the time I got back to the room, the hallway was quiet. The moonlight poured through the motel's foggy windows. I opened the door and froze. Cole was lying on the bed, fresh from the shower, a white robe barely tied across his chest. His damp hair fell across his forehead, and a soft smile played at his lips like he was dreaming something sweet. Most of his chest was exposed. Strong, lean. And just like that, something in me shifted. I stood there, unable to move, my heart hammering. "Lisa, what the hell are you doing?" I whispered in my mind. But the moment had already sunk its teeth into me. And that right there is where everything truly began. I closed the door behind me softly, like I didn't want to wake him. But the truth was, I didn't want to disturb whatever was happening inside me. That moment, that strange quiet, it felt like something was about to crack open. Cole lay there still in that barely there robe, his chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. One leg draped over the edge of the bed, and the robe had slipped just enough to make my pulse skip. The sight should have made me turn away, should have jolted me back to reality, but I didn't move. I just stood there watching him breathe, trying to make sense of the wildfire that had started inside me. I took a step forward. My sandals barely made a sound on the thin carpet. Another step. The room was small, but right then, it felt like I was walking through something sacred, charged, dangerous. My heart was hammering. "Lisa, what are you doing?" I sat down at the edge of the bed, careful not to wake him. The air conditioner clicked, then let out a tired wheeze. The heat hadn't gone anywhere. Cole shifted slightly, his head rolling to the side. Then, his eyes opened. We locked eyes, and for a moment neither of us said a word. It was like we were trying to figure out if we were dreaming, or if maybe, just maybe, we were both thinking the same thing. His voice was barely above a whisper. "You're back." "Yeah," I said. My voice cracked a little. "Didn't want to wake you." He sat up slowly, the robe sliding further down his shoulder. Wasn't really asleep. The silence between us grew heavier, hotter. His eyes scanned my face softly, carefully, and then, almost as if drawn by gravity, dropped lower. I felt the heat rise up my neck. I stood up and crossed to the chair in the corner of the room. I needed space. Or at least the illusion of it. My hands clenched the armrests as I sat down, trying to anchor myself. Cole watched me for a moment, then did something that sent a jolt through me. He stood up. His robe fell open just slightly as he walked to the dresser, pulling out a pair of shorts. He moved slowly, like he knew I was watching, and he didn't rush. Every step felt intentional. I didn't say a word, just watched from the corner of my eye, my breath shallow, my pulse screaming in my ears. He slipped on the shorts, then turned not back to the bed but to the same chair I sat in, and took the other across from me. We were just a few feet apart now, close enough to touch, close enough to feel each other's heat. "You okay?" he asked, voice gentle, unsure. I nodded, but it wasn't convincing. "I don't know what's happening," I admitted, eyes locked on the space between us, "but this isn't normal." He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "Maybe normal's overrated." I let out a shaky breath, laughing bitterly. "You have no idea how dangerous that sounds. Then why are you still here?" His question landed hard. I looked up, and this time I didn't look away. "Because I said I don't want to be alone tonight." The words left my mouth before I could stop them, and once they were out, I couldn't take them back. Cole didn't blink, didn't smirk, just sat there like he understood exactly what I meant. "I've felt something," he said slowly. "For a while. I just didn't know if you ever noticed." Noticed God? How could I not? His jokes, his lingering looks, the way he hovered near the kitchen when I was cooking, the way he always found a reason to hang around when Mark was gone. I'd chalked it up to coincidence, or maybe just my imagination, but sitting here with nothing between us but heat and silence, I knew better. "You're Mark's son," I whispered. This is wrong." Cole leaned back, letting the silence hang in the air. Then said something I'll never forget. "Maybe it's wrong," he said, "but it doesn't feel like it." I swallowed hard. My hands were trembling, even though I tried to hide it. He stood up slowly, walked to the dresser. And this time, instead of pulling out clothes, he just stood there facing away. "I can sleep on the floor," he said quietly, "if that makes it easier." I shook my head. "Don't be ridiculous." He turned back, his expression unreadable. "Then what do you want, Lisa?" That question hung between us like a live wire, and I didn't have an answer. All I knew was this: every inch of my body was alive. Every part of me that had gone numb over the last few years, every lonely night, every quiet dinner by myself, every unanswered call, was screaming to be seen, to be wanted, to feel something again. Cole took one slow step toward me, then another. He didn't reach for me, didn't touch me. He just looked me in the eyes and said, Whatever happens tonight, you're not alone. And somehow, those words broke something open inside me. I didn't sleep that night. Even after Cole turned off the lights, even after we both lay still on opposite ends of the bed, silence was loud. The space between us buzzed with something unspoken, an energy so thick it could choke. I faced the wall, tried to steady my breath. Just one night, and we go back to normal. But what even was normal anymore? Mark had become a ghost in my life, always calling late, always distracted, always too tired to ask me how I was. For months, I'd been living in a house full of echoes. Now here I was, in a dingy motel room, one wall away from the very thing that made my heart beat again. I heard him shift. Then, silence again. Then finally, his voice. "You awake?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure if I could trust my own voice. But eventually, I whispered, "Yeah." Another pause. Then, "Can't sleep." I turned over my eyes, adjusting to the faint light from the parking lot seeping through the curtains. Cole was lying on his back now, his arms behind his head, staring at the ceiling. "Me neither," I said softly. He looked over. Our eyes met. My breath caught. "You want me to switch to the chair?" he asked, already sitting up a bit. "No," I said quickly, then softened. "I mean, it's fine. We're both adults. It's just one bed." Cole laid back down, a quiet smile at the corner of his lips. Right, just one bed. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick, alive. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Then, without thinking, I sat up. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I keep trying to tell myself this doesn't mean anything, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That it's just a weird night. A broken car. A motel room. Cole turned to face me, his voice low, steady. "Doesn't feel like nothing to me." I let out a shaky laugh. That's the problem. For a long time, neither of us moved. But something in his eyes pulled me closer, like a thread I couldn't cut. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up. He watched every move I made. I took a few slow steps to the small dresser mirror. I stared at my reflection, my loose hair, my flushed cheeks, the uncertainty in my eyes. Then I turned to him. "You're really not going to make this easy, are you?" He sat up slowly, resting his forearms on his knees. "Lisa, I'm not trying to confuse you. I've never felt anything like this. Not just attraction. It's like I see you. Really see you." His words landed deeper than I expected. In that room, in that moment, he wasn't just my stepson. He was a man looking at a woman who had been invisible for far too long. I stepped toward him, my voice softer now. "When I walked in earlier and saw you lying there, I couldn't breathe." He held my gaze. I was pretending to be asleep, just so I wouldn't say something stupid. I laughed under my breath. Too late. The distance between us had shrunk to a few feet now, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his skin, close enough to cross a line I couldn't uncross. He reached out slowly, like he was afraid I'd pull away, and his hand brushed mine. That single touch was electric. And suddenly, the silence between us shattered. I leaned in, just an inch, then another. Our foreheads touched. My hand slid over his cheek. His breath hitched. "You sure about this?" I whispered. "No," he replied, "but I'm sure I don't want to wonder anymore." I kissed him. It wasn't wild. It wasn't reckless. It was slow, careful, like we both knew we were standing on a cliff's edge and decided to jump anyway. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me closer. My heart was pounding against my ribs. My fingers tangled in his hair. The world outside that motel room didn't exist anymore. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Everything was said in that kiss. By the time we pulled away, my head was spinning. His eyes searched mine, looking for something, regret, maybe. But I had none. He stood up still, holding my hand, and led me slowly back to the bed. The dim light from the window painted soft shadows on his face. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilt or shame. I felt wanted. And it terrified me how much I wanted him too. We lay side by side, breath-sinking fingers laced. In the silence, I whispered, "What now?" Cole looked over and said the one thing I wasn't prepared to hear. I don't want this to be a one-night thing. The morning sun was already creeping in through the thin curtains when I opened my eyes. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. The motel ceiling, the buzzing AC, the scratchy sheet against my skin. Then I felt his arm draped over my waist, warm and firm. Cole. Reality hit me like a wave. I held my breath and stared at the ceiling, afraid to move, afraid to speak. What we'd done, there was no taking it back. He stirred behind me, shifting closer, his breath grazing the back of my neck. Morning, he murmured sleepily, his voice thick and low. I didn't answer right away. How do you say good morning to the boy who just crossed the most sacred line in your life? I finally sat up, pulling the blanket around myself like it could somehow protect me from the mess we'd made. Cole blinked at me through the morning light, a half smile still lingering on his lips. You okay? I don't know, I whispered. There was no anger in his eyes, no regret either. Only something deeper. Something I wasn't sure I could name. He leaned forward, reaching for his shirt. You don't have to say anything, he said quietly. I know this. Changes things. I stood up, wrapping the blanket around me as I walked to the tiny bathroom. I needed to breathe, to think. But my reflection offered no answers, just a woman who looked more alive and more confused than she had in years. Cole knocked softly on the doorframe. I called the mechanic. Car's good to go. We can head out whenever you're ready. I nodded, not turning around, and we're picking up Mark on the way back. Remember that name? It dropped into the room like a grenade. I froze. Right. Mark. My husband. Cole's father. The man I had come to visit. How had I forgotten? I swallowed the lump in my throat and turned around. Yeah, right. Let's go. The ride was quiet. Cole kept his eyes on the road, his usual easygoing chatter gone. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands in my lap, staring out at the endless stretch of highway. The world outside was moving, but inside me, everything felt frozen. He glanced over once. You sure you're okay? I nodded, lying through my teeth. Fine. But I wasn't fine. Every memory from the night before ran through my head in flashes, the way he looked at me, the heat of his skin, the things we said, the way I let it happen, the way I wanted it to happen. I had no excuse, no justification, and yet, no regret. And that was the part that scared me most. Cole pulled off the highway and turned into a rest stop. I need a minute, he said, parking under a tree. We sat in silence for a while, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. Then he looked at me. I meant what I said last night, he said. I don't want this to be just one night. I know it's complicated and messy, but Lisa, I've never felt this way before. I looked at him, really looked at him. This boy, this man, sitting across from me with eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years. Admiration, longing, honesty. It would have been so easy to dismiss him, to shut it down and bury everything. But I couldn't. Not yet. I don't know what happens next, I said finally. But we can't pretend last night didn't happen. He nodded. I'm not pretending. And neither was I. We reached the city by late afternoon. Mark was waiting at the curb in front of a small office building, a suitcase by his side and his phone in hand. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Worn down by work and distance and whatever it was that had built the wall between us. When he saw the car, he waved and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Cole popped the trunk, got out, and helped with the luggage. Mark climbed into the back seat, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. Hey, baby. You okay? You look tired. I forced a smile. Yeah. Just didn't sleep much. He leaned forward, patting Cole on the shoulder. Thanks for picking me up, kid. I know it's a long drive. Cole nodded without turning around. No problem. I could feel the tension hanging between us. Invisible to Mark, but heavy as lead between me and Cole. Mark leaned back, stretching. Man, it's good to be home. I missed you both. My heart twisted. He had no idea. None. And as we pulled back onto the highway, heading toward the life we were supposed to share, I realized everything had changed. There was no going back. And somewhere deep down, I didn't want to. The ride home felt like a dream I wasn't ready to wake from. Mark sat in the back, scrolling through emails, completely unaware of the storm sitting inches away. Cole kept his eyes on the road, but every now and then our eyes met in the mirror. Just for a second. Just enough to feel it again. That pull, that ache. I wanted to scream, to confess, to undo everything, but I didn't. Because deep down, I knew there was no undoing any of it. When we finally pulled into the driveway, Mark got out first, already talking about work. I followed, numb. Cole lingered by the car. I turned back. Our eyes met. No words, just silence. And a question hanging heavy in the air. What now? I didn't have the answer. But as I walked inside, one thing was certain. The story wasn't over. Not yet.